Okay, so welcome. I'm back in studio with Cameron Cohen and Brandy McSleen.
Brady McSleen.
Oh, Brady. Okay, sorry about that. Brady McSleen. Okay, here I am.
Don't worry, everybody makes that mistake.
Brady. Oh, I said Brandy, didn't I?
Mhm.
Wow,
Very common.
I just stick an end in there, right?
You have no idea how many times people do that.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So I want Cameron to help me and viewers to get into the right framework of fashion necessary for this show. So give me a few abstract thoughts that get people on the frequency of fashion, and I mean from a consumer standpoint and also from an industry standpoint. What's your approach there?
Well, one of the things that I think Brady and I discovered when we just got done with our All About Fashion podcast series on the Cameron Journal was, and I didn't really put two and two together, but neither of us realized how much fashion is so influential in geopolitical events. Like the want of fur got furriers to go into the interior parts of North America looking for fur. That led to European colonization of North America because people wanted fur on their clothes. Cotton, the desire for cotton and cheap fiber, transatlantic slave trade, the founding of this country, the Civil War. I mean, so when you start to look at these major historical events, somewhere in there is a thread, pardon the pun, to fashion and clothing and what people wear on their bodies. On top of the fact that you wear, unless you're heathen, some sort of heathen, you're wearing clothes every single day, and there is 100 people behind a t-shirt, the people that picked the fabric, the weight of the fabric, what threads were used in that fabric, how that t-shirt was constructed, what price point it was going to be at, what color it was going to be, what design it was going to have, how it was going to be displayed at the store you bought it at. That's three separate major industries, buyers for all of those, salespeople, marketing people, all this type of thing. So just to get a t-shirt into your hands takes a small tribe of people. And when you start to look at it from a 360-degree view, fashion might seem like this sort of trifling thing that doesn't matter, but it's actually a really massive business that has major effects on our lives, on the world, in ways that you might not expect.
And it is a very personal, very, very extremely personal form of art for everyone.
Yeah.
Every time you pick out something to wear.
And interpretive, right? I mean, because it's directly tied to the market too. So I mean, I imagine there's some top-down sort of conditioning or like suggesting, but for the most part, it's very responsive to what you mentioned. Like Cameron beautifully put an anthropological framework in there and said that for hundreds and thousands of years, the cultures and the civilizations really, they simultaneously shaped their fashion, and their fashion actually shaped them too, which is very interesting. Yeah,
certainly. And people, I mean, it's not so much now, but fashion has been, it is still today because it's an indication of class, but in other civilizations and in days past, it was an indication of wealth, social position, occupation in many cases. In indigenous tribes in this continent, it was an indication of if you were married, if you were single, if you were trans, if you were gay. I mean, it was all of these things. It's not, and even now, if a dude walks down the street in short shorts and a crop top, okay, like you can look at them and you, even if you're wrong, there's certain assumptions you make if certain people wear certain things. Even in preparing for this podcast, I was like, well, if we're going to talk about fashion, I should look like someone who works in fashion. So out comes the accessories that I rarely wear. Out comes the bespoke vest made by Brady herself last summer. And out comes the nicer, more expensive t-shirt. All this type of thing, because I wanted to look like someone who has worked in fashion and owned a vintage shop, because we owned a vintage shop together, and who created the modern Denver Fashion Week that still existed as day and under another organization. I wanted to appear like that. So I hurriedly picked clothes that made me look like someone who had done those things.
Hence
Brady
why I'm
coordinated
wearing,
her skirt with her lipstick.
yes, and it's my great aunt's vintage dress that I redid years ago. So, same thing.
Oh,
Yeah.
great aunt's vintage dress. Yeah, that repurposing, that kind of speaks about where we're at in society right now, reusing some things and repurposing. And how much of an influence does that have in the way you guys think of fashion?
It's becoming more and more popular to do more of that. Cameron and I used to do this years and years ago, but it is becoming more popular in like, you see more and more of these smaller brands that are, go to the thrift store, find beautiful vintage clothing, but redo them in a way that makes them make sense today. And I do that because I primarily work with wedding dresses. So I've definitely done that several times with women who come in with their mom's wedding dress or their grandma's that was their mom's that now is theirs. And we just remake them into something that fits today's style, but also keeps that history in it.
Yeah, yeah. So for a layman that really doesn't understand how a wedding dress is created, there's things like making sure that the lines of the dress follow complement the form of the bride, and you have those skills to be able to like redesign or seamstressy kind of like ways to be able to where to take strings out, how to put it all back together. That's interesting. So, I mean, you would say you would have those skills, right? That's part of what
I do have those skills, but only within the restraints of the physical world. So you can't make certain things fit a way that they were never meant to fit, but I can make
Yeah,
almost
how do you
anything work.
explain that to somebody who wants to look a certain way, maybe, and it's just like, I'm sorry, honey, but it just ain't gonna.
That's her life. The brides that want their boobs higher than the fabric can reasonably support. I want to have my dress up, but I don't want my butt to look big. Well, the fabric has to go somewhere, honey. Like,
Yeah.
Spend a lot of time trying to explain science to people.
yeah.
But can you find like and it's weird how we're stuck on the female form. It's kind of a problem I have, I'll admit. But the thing is about the female form, let's say, there's different body types. We just roughly say, and this doesn't mean to degrade women or anything, but like an apple shape or pear shape or, these kinds of things. Do you have things in your arsenal of design that kind of lend themselves to
Yes.
maybe flattering or accentuating? What is your approach in that?
I definitely do. But it also really depends because I do the altering after they buy the dress. So I don't make the dress. I make it fit them. And so a lot of times it really depends on the dress you pick. If you didn't pick a dress that's going to complement your body, there's only so many things we can do if you want that dress to be exactly the same, but then complement your body. Like there's only so much we can do. But there's a lot of tricks.
Well, and I would also say in terms of like the broader conversation of fashion, and this women's fashion has this problem particularly bad, and it's on my mind because we just talked about this on Wednesday, is, designers kind of decide the shape of the woman they're going to design their clothes for. And if you go into a store and it's like nothing here fits, or things are too small, or things are too large, or whatever have you, it's because your body style isn't the style they picked to design their clothes for. And so there's going to be some differences and some variances, which is why clothing sizes for women are meaningless. Don't get caught up on numbers. They have no value. They don't mean anything because they're entirely arbitrary by the designers based upon who they think is going to buy their clothes. And there are some body styles that get very little design for them. Like if you're apple shaped, that's sad. Like that's sad. No, and I say this because I have a woman in my life right now who is apple shaped and hates fashion, and it is no wonder why, because no clothes are designed for her body style. Everything's got to be accessorized, tailored, modified, whatever have you, because designers don't really design for that body shape. Pear-shaped women oftentimes have the same problem. The farther you get from hourglass, the fewer options there are for you, and the fewer designers are gonna do stuff, sort of thing. And so that makes things quite difficult as well.
And you'd be surprised about like even tall, thin, model looking types can't find clothes for themselves. Like you have to be
Yes.
just very average, very extremely average. Or you like everybody needs something tailored.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. Okay, what do you guys think about iconic um, fashion moments? And I mean, I just mean what makes something in fashion, what makes it iconic? What would you say, Cameron?
It's an expression of culture in that moment. Fashion is moved forward by a couple things. Social change is a big one. War is a big one, particularly in the last 150 years. And sometimes shifting expectations. Oftentimes, and Brady and I talked about this a lot. When society shifts, the first thing we do is change what we wear. It seems counterintuitive, but it really is. If you think about the pandemic, the first thing we talked about was, well, we're stuck in the house for lockdown, t-shirts and sweatpants, and oh, does anybody have an extra mask? In the worst global crisis to hit the globe probably since the Black Plague, our first concern was, well, there's a pandemic outside. What are we going to wear? Right?
Throwing out all of our bras and just wearing sports bras because
Yes.
nobody cared anymore.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's like for this series, I put together a playlist of about 5 or 6 different fashion shows that had things that were truly iconic that lasted for different reasons. The oldest of whom is Dior 1947, The New Look, which is one of Brady and I, that's kind of one of our favorite collections. And it was a reaction to World War II. Everyone had been under fabric rationing for almost a decade at that point. And so when The New Look came along, and Dior used all this fabric and huge skirts and tight bodice with a waist, it was revolutionary because it was a reaction to years and years of rationing. And so all of a sudden, women could have a level of elegance and femininity that they hadn't had since nobody knew who Adolf Hitler was. And so, yeah, but then you also fast forward 20 more years to like 1965 with the arrival of the Mondrian dress by Yves Saint Laurent. And that dress is so iconic, it's totemic. If you want to put up something about the 60s, you can just post a picture of that dress, even without a model. And it's one of the few instantly recognizable pieces of fashion in the world. People who've never, ever given a care about clothing will recognize that dress because it's totemic. So I found the footage of the original 1965 YSL show where that dress was first featured, and it is also revolutionary because of its construction. It is squares of colored fabric that are sewn together, and those seams are covered in black. And it looks like it all was made to be that way, which is incredibly difficult to do.
It was our first look into color blocking, which became such a huge thing for decades.
Yeah.
Mm.
So, I mean, those are, and the other one that was also on that playlist that was also really important, and this is also one Anna Wintour calls iconic, John Galliano, 1994. That was a real turning point in terms of making. There had been a lot of trends in the 80s and 90s in terms of fashion, with elegance and punk from Vivienne Westwood and new romanticism and all this type of thing. And John Galliano kind of took all that together, and he really created the style that would define the rest of that decade.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you think of, shows the last 30 years or so, that one stands out particularly. The other one that also stands out is Alexander McQueen 2002, I think still for Givenchy. He got industrial paint robots from an automobile factory to spray a model on the runway as she spun around. And that dress in its painted form was at the Met exhibit, and is, I believe, on permanent display in their offices in London. And that no one had ever done that before. And that's kind of what's really cool about fashion at that level, is you get these things that happen that have never happened before, and then it completely informs everything else, and you can't patent it or copyright it, so it's knocked off a million quadrillion times all over the world. And that one singular moment can define an era. It can redefine style after an era. It can, change how we look at the world. That's one of the great things about fashion is it helps in this very weird way. It helps us shift our perspective.
And that's how it shows you that fashion is art. Like they're one and the same. It's not just my graphic t-shirt. It is art that you are expressing.
You almost could have a little side slogan that it says fashion is that you buy into is art that you buy into, right?
Yep.
You inhabit it, and then it becomes part of.
The best line from The Devil Wears Prada, Stanley Tucci is standing in the closet at Runway, and he said, it's probably the most important piece of art because you live your life in it. That's what makes fashion kind of different, is it's something that's deeply creative. It takes 100, 200 people to create, and you live your life in it. We go to funerals. We go to weddings. After you visit Brady and have it altered, we go to weddings. We go to our first christening. There's the outfit you wore to the hospital when your child was born. You have the outfit you came home from the hospital in. All this type of thing. I mean, it's you have the first little thing you put your baby in, whatever onesie little sort of thing that you found to take kid home in, which you don't know how many people forget that. If you're having a kid, get something for the kid to wear home. But from we can be days old and somebody has to decide what to put us in so we can go home. We live our lives in it every single day. And even in that stupid newborn onesie, someone picked the fabric, picked the pattern, made sure it was hypoallergenic, make sure there was nothing to pull or hurt the baby in any way. There's a whole science behind children's clothing. That's a whole thing. And the poor baby's only going to fit into it for a couple weeks as it grows and then doesn't fit anymore. It's constant. We live our lives in it. And people kind of look down on fashion a lot, or get very I say reverse snobbery about some of the art pieces that get put down haute couture runways, but they don't realize haute couture is the R&D for ready to wear. Haute couture is the F1 race, and what happens at that level then gets devolved down to ready to wear, and then devolved down to you. Which the other iconic speech in Devil Wears Prada, it was when Miranda tells Andrea why her blue crappy sweater is the result of people like her who make decisions about what colors things will be, what patterns things will be, what weight of yarns that will be used, all this type of thing. And that even at the lowest level, all of that gets funneled down to whatever it is that you put on. And it represents thousands of hours and dozens of decisions by hundreds of people.
And it is definitely, for sure, one of the most fundamental, intimate forms of self-expression, because everybody has to wear clothes. Everybody picks out their own clothes. Everybody decides how they want to express themselves to the world. And that's the first thing you see. That's the first thing you notice. And so we all pick our things based on how we want to be seen in the world.
Yeah, that's really important. Going back to this idea of the Mondrian dress, it's iconic, but I'm trying to think of something from Tolstoy where he talks about I'm not sure if it was humor. I think it was humor. Art. No, sorry. Yeah, it was art. It was Tolstoy's version of art, and it has to hit the plebeian. It has to hit like that substrate of the public. And so, you've already said that the Mondrian dress was so transformative within the industry, but the intellectual understanding of what the separation of colors and the psychological stuff behind a Mondrian painting was not necessarily transferred down to the general public. And so how does it keep enough strength if it's orientated in something like the cultural elite, or the people that only read Tolstoy and Mondrian?
Well, we have to remember that dress is a potent symbol of the 60s. that dress, the Volkswagen Beetle, the peace sign. I mean, there's a couple things that are totemic of that era. And if you want to symbolize them, all you have to do is post a picture of that. That piece of fashion has reached that level. I don't know that you can get any farther reach. As I said when I was talking about it, that dress is so well known. People who have never, ever thought about fashion for 5 minutes longer than whatever they bought at Walmart will recognize that garment. And it was made to be worn by people. That's its job. And yet, it is so culturally potently powerful, you can put a picture of it and instantly it's the 60s, it's cool, it's hip, it's mod, it's all of these things that have been ascribed to it out of a piece of clothing. Brady and I have been lucky enough when the YSL exhibition came to Denver, they had the complete series of that dress. It comes in 5 colorways. And we've actually seen it. I've stood 2 feet from it, in front of it, in my life, which is still
so hard not to touch things.
Yes. Hands in pockets the whole time. It's like I've stood 2 feet from it.
And you want to touch it, right? You want to feel the fabric, right? Like,
yes.
If you could get like a secret petting, you'd be like in there kind of rubbing it.
Oh, no. And I was so envious. We have a friend in Denver named Mona Lucero. She did the dressing of the mannequins for that show. And I'm so jealous because she got to touch all of it. We got to touch nothing. She got to touch all of it because she was doing the dressing of the mannequins. And so it was just, yes, we had to really stop ourselves but it's still amazing to stand 2 feet from that and be like, it's totemic. It's such this huge symbol. It is a cultural tour de force. It is as from a construction perspective, it's a marvel in terms of cut and construction that had never been done before. Not really. Not until McQueen matched Tartan on the bias had something so important been done in cut and construction. And to have just stood 2 feet from it in my life is still mind blowing. Like that happened, So, I mean, I think it has reached the plebeian level because it's just so recognizable in a way that almost no other fashion is. Like when me and Brady look at fashion, we can name designers and years and collections and blah, because I used to do this. She still does this. That's been our lives. I cannot think of a single other piece of fashion that I could hold a picture up on a street and people would immediately know what it was. They would at least have some thought, feeling, idea about it. They may not know the designer or the year or anything, but they will have seen it, recognized it, and then become like, oh, that's that cool 60s dress. That's reach. And no, I said, I can't think of a single other single garment that has that type of reach ever.
Because there are other styles that are noteworthy for being certain time periods and everything like that, and so you can pull out a ball gown and people will be like, oh, that looks kind of Edwardian, or that kind of stuff, but nothing is just one specific gown has that much that much notoriety.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I never thought about it that way. Is it public knowledge? Like if you were there and you're feeling it and stuff like that, and there's no security around and you're getting away with it, would you be like looking at the seams and going, oh, look what they did? Or is it public knowledge? You can kind of look at the blueprint of it and see how the seams are all done and stuff like that. Is that something that's available to?
I mean, there are, pattern schematics, things like that. But with that one specifically, I would be going through, looking at every seam, looking at every way it was put together and all the stitches and reading the history of it, because you can tell a lot by the way people sew. It's a very personal thing. So I would be going through and just dissecting all of those.
Yeah, and YSL, he didn't sew a lot himself. What he would do is he would design dresses and sketch them, and he had 6 sort of older French women that worked for him, and he would hold up designs and the seamstresses would pick what they wanted to work on. So he had Yeah, they had it at the exhibition. He'd have the small desk, and he would do the sketch, and the ladies would come in, and he would hold them up one by one, and then they would pick what they wanted to work on. And so somebody picked that. One of the six picked that dress, and did that, and then they, labored many hours over it. But I mean, yes, but that's one of the kind of the cool things. One of the films I mentioned in our series that people should go watch if they really want to is called The First Monday in May. It's a 2014 documentary about the lead up to the Met Gala from both the perspective of Vogue, which is the fashion, and the Met Gala Costume Institute, which is the exhibition. And the lead costume curator of the Met Gala does go to the YSL Foundation in Paris, which I have been to, and crawls through their 6,000 piece collection of YSL clothing in Paris that has been perfectly archived. They have the complete colorway run of the Mondrian dress. It comes in 7 colorways, came in 7 colorways, and they have all of them there on perfectly preserved on hangers. Everyone is wearing gloves in white coats. They have these gorgeous closets that move with the turn of a wheel, everything cataloged perfectly, all this type of thing, to preserve this archive of clothing. So yeah, if you want to keep geeking out on this subject, as we put it, that documentary is a lot of fun. Especially because it also talks about the Alexander McQueen show Savage Beauty as well, because that show happened a year and a half after he committed suicide, and it was kind of turned into this year and a half long funeral for the enfant terrible of the fashion world that was ACQ. And that show was sold out from the moment it opened to the moment it closed. And I think it was extended like 3 times because people were just absolutely crazy about it, because you got to see all this wonderful stuff. The Horn of Plenty show, which from 2008, which was iconic. All these different things. So that's a good hour and a half sort of encapsulated geek out session. That's a lot of fun to go and look at. And that show that year was China Through the Looking Glass. So there's a whole cultural aspect of how they did that Met Gala show that is quite interesting and quite important. Because fashion is also very cultural,
What's
Yeah.
that?
I said fashion is very cultural. In today's globalized world, it doesn't seem like it is. But, back then, not very long ago, you could immediately recognize someone by their clothing, and where they came from, if they were, from around here or not, or all this type of thing. And so when you have the merging of East and West in China Through the Looking Glass, and a celebration of both American and Chinese designers, and they staged it in the Chinese galleries at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. So you've got fashion, you've got Chinese artifacts merging together, you have 2 cultures merging together, all this type of thing. It's quite brilliant. It's quite brilliant.
Well, and still, even to this day, even though we're a lot more globalized, there's still, certain cultures, certain religions, especially, that walking down the street, you can know part about what that person believes because of the way they dress.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if someone is wearing a nun's habit, Catholic. If you're in a hijab or a niqab or a burqa, Muslim. I grew up evangelical, so did Brady. We can see those folks from a mile away. It's like, oh, your skirt goes below the knees, you're wearing conservative shoes and something that covers your neck and goes 3/4 of your arm. You go to a Baptist church, don't you? So we can see them we can find them in a crowd. We can find our own. Yeah. But even in the crazy Christian world we grew up in, what's the first thing they regulated? Fashion.
Fashion.
Yeah. So, but what did that same crowd do for you guys? Like, what do they see when they see Cameron walking down the street or Brady walking down the street? What are their, could they put you in a box, or what are you trying to project? I would say, maybe it depends on what you're doing, but like generally, what's your image that you try?
So for me personally, I always wear dresses. I always wear heels. That's just who I am. But that's one of those things is because an old friend of mine told me when I first started my own business and designing and sewing and all of that, and telling me that you are your walking billboard. Like, you do fashion, you do art through fabric. So if you don't look the part, then nobody's going to know. But people are going to ask you questions because I wear vintage dresses, and because I have the funky colored hair, and because, I'm always in a certain type of outfit. It's not nearly as difficult as people seem to think it is to wear a dress every day. It's actually easier than picking out a shirt and a pair of pants at the same time. But yeah, I try to represent who I am as a person through wearing something always flashy, always noticeable.
Yeah, I was gonna playfully play with you and ask you about your hair and say, is that natural? And watch how you look at me, because that would be an interesting natural like genetic hair color, right? I mean,
well, and the interesting part about even the hair is when I first started doing bridal alterations, I really wanted to be very professional about this because my own business, and I'm going to be really professional. And so I let my hair grow out and went back to my natural color and had a very professional, average haircut, and had so many people, so many mothers of the bride. Are you sure you really know what you're doing? Are you sure you really know how to do this? Where would you have known how to do this? And the second I dyed my hair some bizarre color, people stopped asking because I'm artistic now. So of course I know what I'm doing.
Yeah. Don't object with me. I'll stare at you in a real evil way. Yeah. That's going to really hurt my feelings, and
Right?
You have no right to do that. Yeah.
No, Brady gets to have a lot more fun with fashion than I do. I'm a big brown dude. People are already frightened of me, just out of the box. So I try to dress in ways that are very non-threatening. So I dress in a way that's all about kind of threat reduction. And also I'm a bit old-fashioned, so I like to dress in a sort of very quiet elegance. I'm the type of person that I will wear something very expensive, and if you know, you know, and if you don't, you don't, and that's okay. That's always been my style because I grew up in a world where people didn't show off that way. Everything was very understated. And I am a firm believer that elegance, the true essence of elegance, is understatement. So that's what I like to do, is I like to be kind of very understated. And for me, the added benefit is that it puts people more at ease with me. It's like, I'm 6 foot, over 300 pounds. I'm a big dude. I might crush you or kill you. People are scared. And so I use fashion as a way to kind of put people at ease. And in my professional life, I have to look trustworthy. If you're going to, watch the news on the Cameron Journal News Hour every Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific, then you're going to, I need to channel my inner Walter Cronkite and my Edward R. Murrow, and seem like I'm a trustworthy news person. And for me, that doesn't involve a suit, but it does involve certain colors and dressing a certain way and trying to, project that sort of trustworthiness sort of thing. But also being accessible, because it's a big part of what I do. So it depends on where I am and where I'm going, sort of as to how much I dial that up or dial that down. But yeah, it's all part of the decision-making process.
I want to tell you guys a situation that kind of irks me, and it'll probably say a lot about what and how I value fashion. But here's my perspective on one particular situation. So, walking down the street and I see a chain of cyclists all riding, and, they're out of shape, middle-aged people doing a fun sort of bike ride, right? But if they have to goddamn well look like they're on the frickin' Tour de France, and I think, why are you spending that kind of money to pretend that you wear a shirt, looks like you have sponsors? Like, I find it such a weird irony that people, like, they want to ride is this what's going on? They want to ride the bike. They want to feel like they're like climbing the mountain, and they're winning the race or something. Like, what is it about that sportswear that makes it a full industry? And isn't it like, put your finger down your throat, you want to puke, that we are so easily misled? Like, what do you guys think about that?
So, I think both Cameron and I can agree that neither of us are big fans of sportswear in general either. But a lot of that, again, it's the image. It's, I'm going to ride my bike. I'm going to be really good at this. I'm going to have this hobby forever, and I'm going to just really commit to this. So I'm going to buy what makes me look like I'm really committed to this. Granted, it may go in the basement after 2 bike rides. But when you're doing it, it makes you feel like this is your thing, and you look like you belong.
And to that, there's a group conformity aspect. So like when you go, not that I do this very often, but I live in the Seattle area. And I know the type, because they're down here too. And they show up, it's kind of like, look at us, we're in our group uniform that shows that we're the bicyclists and we're doing bicycling. Because fashion also can be used as in-group conformity a lot. That's why school uniforms work, military uniforms, all this type of thing. It's in-group conformity. In employment, you have to be very careful to dress to the level of style of where you're going. I've worked in offices that are very formal, like the state senate in Colorado, where I could not enter the building without wearing a suit. I've also worked in HVAC, which is construction adjacent. I wore slacks and was politely asked to please wear jeans tomorrow. So it's like the full range. But it's a form of in-group conformity, and it sends, as we talked about fashion sending a message, it's that potent symbol of, look at me, I'm doing cycling.
Mm-hmm. Well,
it might seem absurd, but it's part of the message.
As a motorcycle club that all have to wear the same colors, or I grew up as a punk rock kid in the 90s. Like, what we wore was how you represented yourself and how you all looked like you belonged together. It's just,
Yeah.
The
gangs like
gangs
that too,
do this all the time. Yeah, even the criminals use fashion to send a signal. The Crips and the Bloods choose specific bandana colors so they know who each other are. In prison gangs, you'll have all, like the white supremacist gangs, all shave their heads so they all have the skinhead look, and they all get tattoos with swastikas and things to show that they're a part of a group. They'll in black prison gangs, they'll all sag their pants a certain way, tie their shirts around their waist a certain way, all this type of thing to show who they are. Even criminals do fashion. Hardened criminals who've killed people will do fashion as an in-group conformity thing.
I mean, the old mobsters all had to dress the same.
Yeah. In-group conformity. That was even on The Sopranos. That picture of them sitting outside of Satriale's in the tracksuits is iconic of that TV show because it was in-group conformity of a time and a place and a certain guy in New Jersey who did a certain thing, ate a certain way, lived a certain life, all this type of thing. And it's been parodied a million times on popular television. If you want greasy Italian guy from New Jersey, get a fat dude in a beard in a tracksuit. Boom. Say less, say no more. It's become, and so in a way, has become like these pictographs that if you're in the know, you can just put that thing up and there's a whole context behind that picture.
Yeah, The Sopranos is really interesting. Yeah. You see, you play off of the assumptions and the prejudices, and maybe they're not all bad, I guess, I mean, depends how you use them, right? I suppose.
Well, I mean, but we can even use an example. Why are you wearing a black bucket hat?
Oh, it's blue, but yeah, I mostly because I've got like an incredibly like I got a receding hairline and I like the bucket hat and um I find that well, it's not just the receding hairline, it's kind of like thin up top and my hair blows all over the place. And so this kind of functionally keeps it where I like it. And
But also gives you a sense of comfort because then you don't have to worry about your hair blowing around or
well, it's a
about
cheap
your
man's
hairline going
toupee
back.
too, right?
Yeah.
Huh? Yeah.
But that's still sending a message, because if you weren't wearing it, that would say something about you, your age, where you're at, all this type of thing. Whereas with the hat, that message is kind of curled up. That's still a decision of how you're putting yourself out in the world, how people will perceive you on this show, all this type of thing. It's everywhere. It's everywhere.
Yeah, and there's a convention in long form discussion. Say, for example, like what was the reason behind Lex Friedman wearing a black suit and tie? I mean, there's kind of a, I don't know if it's something that's kind of proven itself out, but like I'm going to take this show seriously, and I'm going to dress up and show that I'm really giving attention, and this will set the tone for the rest. Maybe this is after some sort of like ideal of a news broadcaster or an interview or something like that. But I mean, look at me. I'm in a cabin in the woods. It's a virtual background. I'm just wearing a bucket hat. Looks like I'm going to go fishing, tomorrow morning, kind of thing. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's just like, I mean, same like you, Cameron, and I guess with you, Brandy, like I look at your background, Brandy, and I see all the nice threads in the workshop, and this is your it must be your your artisan sort of like work studio too or something, right? You got like some tools of the trade there, right?
Yeah.
That you can
it's my fitting room. So you got to make everything look kind of part of the look.
Yeah. And Cameron's going to be moving soon. So he's going to have a different studio, but I mean, yeah, it's
no, I angle the camera. I have a new camera now where I can kind of blur the background, but you can actually see over here my free write typewriter. It sits there because it looks good on camera, because it makes me seem writerly, because that's my primary thing. I also have a giant IBM Selectrix too that you can kind of see, but it's a nice background thing because it seems like, oh yes, I was just writing a novel and I've taken a break to come speak to you, sort of thing. It puts people at ease. It makes them feel better.
You're accessorizing and you're taking dominion of your space. So some people's fashion is just this, then it becomes like, here's my nest, and there's my typewriter, and here's my this and that, and blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
So you guys could be fashion designers, you could be interior designers. I suppose you could be both in one and the same if you wanted to.
Oh, it even goes into, looking for the right person to help you. When I first got my new car, it had a very bad battery in it. And I was at the beach with my girl and the battery died. And I didn't have my jumper like I do now. So I had to find someone who could jump my car. And so I'm looking up and down the beach, and I'm looking for a man with a truck that's dirty and goes to work, because he's going to have jumper cables. And so we're staring there, and I'm like, babe, we need a guy with a truck who looks like he goes to work. And so we see an F-250 over here, dirty, with a toolbox in the back. Great, let's go talk to him. He's likely to have jumper cables. He looks like he works construction. Let's go talk to him.
But you probably knows what he's doing.
Yes.
Yeah, you had to modify what you said too, because you knew who he was, and what were the words that came out of your mouth? You'd be like, hey man, can I get a boost?
Well, here's the thing. I had a strategy. I sent the lady over to be like, can you go ask him if he can come jump the car, because he's gonna be more responsive. If I walk up, it's an immediate intimidation sort of thing. If she walks up, he's gonna be more willing to help. He did come over. He was very nice, and I also fixed the hood latch on his truck because his hood wasn't opening, and he just needed to bend it back a little bit. So I bent it back into place, fixed his hood. He jumped in my car. Everyone was happy. We went on our merry way. But even in that moment, to find help, I was looking for symbols, signs, dress, style, things that kind of like, okay, if I look for these things, my chances of finding what I need go up.
Well, it's just like when my son was little, that was one of the things I taught him at a very, very young age of if you ever got separated or ever got lost and couldn't find us, this is what a police uniform looks like. This is what a firefighter's uniform looks like. You find one of those or a mother with kids, and that's who you go talk to. Like, look for the image that people are representing, because those are the safe places.
Yeah. And in terms of a sicko radar, wouldn't it? I mean, there are those cherished, iconic images. You can imagine a child abductor, whatever, who would dress up in a police uniform. Like, it's worse than just a child abductor. It's like, you, man, like,
Yeah.
you're
really
violating something that's more sacred than even the worst we can imagine, right? You know what I mean?
But that was the thing with like Jeffrey Dahmer. What was so discordant about Jeffrey Dahmer? He was young, white, all-American, good-looking. I think he was an all-American football player, all this type of thing. We don't associate those symbols with a creep killer, serial killer dude. Yeah, exactly. So that was what was so discordant. We expect that person to look like the Green River Killer down here. Creepy, bad hair, all this stuff. We have ideas about what a serial killer should look like. And Dahmer was so shocking because he broke all those stereotypes.
And he dressed nice all the time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Always very nice.
I don't want to disrespect the horrors that he did, but I'm playing a funny skit of Dahmer in my head right now where he is completely truthful about what he's doing. He's saying, you know what, look, I want to take you home and eat you. And she's like looking at him going, "Rawr," this kind of thing. Like, he's telling you.
Yes. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
but that's yeah. No, but that's where we can. The messages that we send out can be incredibly truthful. They can also be incredibly deceptive. Because Brady's right. He always just nice. He showed up into court, looking great and lovely, and that was what was so. I think beyond the cannibalism part, what was so shocking was that it didn't look like what we think the creeper should look like. And that's honestly true, because here's the thing, because this comes up in a lot in discussions of sexual assault, it's never usually the guy in the trench coat flashing you in the park you have to worry about. It's a pastor, it's a priest, it's people who dress nice, are close to your family, you would have over for dinner, all this type of thing. So when people say, oh, drag queens are coming for your kids, I'm like, ma'am, I'm more worried about your children's ministry pastor. I'm more worried about your youth ministry pastor than the drag queen, to be honest. Drag queens don't really like children because they're gay. Right? But the children's pastor at your church, I'm much more concerned about, because we have legal documentation of how often that happens in this country. I'm much more concerned about your priest. This is the problem.
So people in places of power that dress nice, that look safe, that seem safe. And the drag queen is more different looking,
taboo,
right. And also very similar to, can be a little more off-putting because of Uncanny Valley, because they look slightly different, like a clown, things like that. Lots of makeup, lots of that stuff. So for children, sometimes they're not as willing than your nice youth pastor at your church, who's looks a certain way.
Right.
Yeah, we have this implicit, like, there's a trust with the parents and the children, that if the parent says that your pastor is a good person, I can leave you there. I mean, you just, okay, so that's a shame. Both Cameron and I are involved.
And that's why Brady didn't let her son in youth ministry at church as a child.
Yep, he's never allowed to go to nursery.
Because we grew up in that world and we know what goes down. So that's...
Wow. So you still know about it, and you have to kind of navigate it, interesting.
I mean, to be honest, the way her son is, that would have lasted all of about 30 seconds, because this is the child that said, and I'm quoting now, "If you think someone was molesting me, you think I'd keep quiet about it," unquote. He was 10 when he said that, because that's how long Brady and I have been friends, and so that would have lasted about 30 seconds. But here's the sad reality is, parents entrust their children, being serious now, parents entrust their children, small children, in a church environment, which is supposed to be safe, with people. And the unfortunate reality is, while they're, and here's where the symbols are wrong, and this is why it's so discordant. They're looking for the creeper in the trench coat, or they're afraid of the gay due to the drag queen or whatever have you, where the reality is, it's the priest, it's the church pastor, it's all these sorts of trustworthy that end up actually being the real threat. But because ironically, of the way they dress, the way they act, the way they are, we don't perceive them as a threat unless it unfortunately happened to you and you know how deceptive that can be.
Mm.
You know.
So you know how to homogenize and blend in, and that's an important deceptive tactic too, that I don't want to stand out, you know, and for what reason? Maybe social anxiety, but maybe just, you know, like you explained, Cameron, it could be, you know, the conformity of the church wearing, right? I mean, you implicitly trust your father, right? I mean, to use the metaphor, right? So,
right. No, but that's where, you know, but that's where, you know, something like that, fashion can be used as a weapon to put you at ease when you really should be when you really should be feeling you're in danger, you know. So that sword cuts both ways, you know. And it's ironic that we have a conversation in this country about drag queen story hour and grooming and all this type of thing, when it's like, how many billions is the Catholic Church paying out? Like, you want to talk about grooming? Look, you know, say less, you know, sort of thing. And to be perfectly honest, if I ever had small children, quite frankly, I would trust the drag queen more. Like, it's, you know, my chances of something bad going happen are much, much less. And people act like drag queens these girls are showing up in nothing. But you look at it from a fashion perspective. Every time I've seen a drag queen story hour, everyone is wearing long Crocs, skirts down to the ankle, collars up to here. It's like, that's what my mom wears to church. Very conservative. It might be in vinyl, but very conservative, you know, so that nothing is showing and those sort of thing. You know, everyone's very carefully dressed, you know, sort of thing. And I guarantee you that drag queen put more effort and time into making sure they were child appropriate than the children's pastor at the Baptist church down the road, who is doing awful things that we don't want to talk about and is causing unnecessary trauma to children, which is about the lowest thing you can do in this world.
Well, and I mean, if we're going on the religion base too, that's the other part of it, is women's bodies are viewed so weirdly in religion atmospheres. And, you know, I've gotten accused by people in the church of thinking that, well, you know, if you didn't wear such a low-cut shirt, then you're making me sin. You're making me sin by thinking inappropriate thoughts about you because your dress slipped off your shoulder slightly and it's making me sin. You're the fault. It's your fault for your body just existing and for the fashion that you wear. And, you know, yes, I think there's something, especially like for children's things and stuff like that, to be dressed appropriate and things like that. But it's such a weird thing in religion of blaming women and just the fact that we have shapes for being something that that is a negative to men because we exist.
And the reverse is not true. Like, very rarely will you say, oh, men, well, I mean, where I grew up, it was men didn't need to be covered up for various other reasons. But it's never because, you know, well, if you're shirtless outside, 5 women are going to come attack you, sort of thing. The narrative was completely different, you know, sort of thing. You know, it was that there was much less pressure on, like, growing up, much less pressure on the boys to get fashion right than there was on the girls. If a girl's skirt was too short, she was sent home. This really happened. Lots. If a boy comes
times.
Yes, if a boy comes dressed slightly inappropriately, that was kind of more forgivable. He could stay and kind of get away with it, sort of thing. Different standards. But I mean, ironically, all of this, everything we've talked about, all these rivers and creeks that we've gone down, all have to do with something as pedantic as clothing. That's what I think is so cool about fashion, is this conversation has gone on for an hour and we have explored things that should have nothing to do with fashion. And yet all that leads back down to the big river of fashion and clothing and what
Yeah.
you wear and why you wear it. That's really kind of that is interesting to me.
Yeah, yeah. Brady, have you had any? I want to spend some time on this about the shoulder of your dress slipping down or something like this, and
Mm-hmm.
somebody experiencing sin. I mean, first of all, I don't know. I don't even know how to frame it really, but trying to step away from this idea of sin, and step right into the fact that women have power of attraction, right? I mean, I know that men have attractive powers too, but I think this is a unique power that women have. I mean, men pursue women for the most part. I mean, I know
Yeah.
it happens the other way, but I mean, I think a woman's sexuality is a powerful thing to be able to wield, and probably empowering, right? To take
Yeah.
charge of that sexuality and flaunt it when you have it, and accentuate it when you can, and use it to cast a spell on us ridiculous heathens. I mean,
Yeah. I mean, and it is one of those things that, especially working in the bridal industry and stuff like that, women like to feel beautiful. They like to feel desirable. They like to feel loved. But at the same time, it's also wielded against us, because how many times in a rape case have you heard the old tired line of, well, yeah, but look what she was wearing. She was asking for it. She talked to that guy and she had a short skirt on. So she's the reason why this happened.
yeah.
So it goes both ways.
Yeah.
And let's also remember, like, the age at which this conversation starts. Like, I was really bothered by years and years because the way we grew up, it seemed like, as a boy, if you, were naked near a girl, you would get her pregnant and your life would be over, sort of thing. Biology doesn't work that way, but that was the narrative. And so oftentimes, especially in conservative, circles, these conversations with girls start at 12 and 13. They were children playing with dolls last week, and now all of a sudden they are, the temptress sublime. They've gone from child to Hedy Lamarr in as many weeks, and that's a lot of pressure to put on young girls who just want to have fun and dress the way they dress and do what they're going to do and all this type of thing. And there are some fashion decisions that women make that don't make any sense to me. I will never understand why women wear shorts that only come down to mid-thigh, like slightly below the vagina line. That will never make any sense to me. Wear what you want and go with God. Just doesn't make any sense to me. That's fine. It's whatever. I helped raise my cousins and they all dressed like that. And I always was mysterious, but whatever, girls. And so you have to have this balance between being able to wear what you want and have fun and all this type of thing, but also understanding the male gaze. There was a conversation between Meryl Streep and Anna Wintour where Meryl Streep remarked, we want our girls to have fun. We want them to be feminine. We want them to do all of these things, but we also have to have them understand the power of the male gaze and what that does. And that was honestly probably one of the most pressing things I've ever heard on the topic from an unexpected source, sort of thing. And that's a lot of pressure at a very young age. And it's something that, again, male privilege strikes again. Boys don't necessarily have to deal with it in the same way.
Mm-hmm. I mean, when I was like 10, 11, I, even in a one-piece bathing suit, had to wear a men's t-shirt over top of it where the boys could just go swimming in their shorts, because my body was temptations to them, could make something bad happen to me.
Could make something good happen to you too, right? I mean, not all male gaze is contaminated with nefarious. It's a powerful biological binding force between people from which true love hopefully can emerge, right? I mean, and
I mean, that's not stuff I believe in now. Like, I let my son's always been able to hang out with girls, even in crop tops and all those things, because I believe that he is a man, he's a boy, he's not out of control of his own self. So, but yeah, that was something that most women at a very young age even with or without religion and things like that, but throughout history have been taught that we are responsible for our own safety and for our own purity and to keep ourselves covered because men can't be trusted.
And let's not forget, a lot of this stuff was sometimes in law. We talked about this in the fashion space. Sumptuary laws were a thing. Up until the 1970s in Britain, a woman could get arrested for wearing too many pieces of men's clothing. Even in New York City, a man could be arrested for wearing too many pieces of women's clothing. That was part of the Stonewall riots that sparked off the gay civil rights movement, was cops arresting queer people over sumptuary laws. That was in 1969, wasn't that long ago. They were also arresting queer people over sex in public and all this type of thing. And the original gay pride was a riot and bricks were thrown. And it was led by someone that was a cross-dresser and is suspected to be trans, Marsha P. Johnson. So that, that's a very different sort of dynamic. And I think when we talk about, I mean, I agree with you, Dan, like sex and sexuality is of course incredibly powerful, and it can lead to good things and bonding and all this type of thing. But the problem is the pressure on women starts at such a young age. That conversation is very different at 16 than it is at 13. And I helped raise 3 girls, and it is different. And they had boyfriends at a young age, younger than I would have necessarily approved of, but different family dynamic. And it's a very, as they got older, they got a lot better handle on it. And that's where I think the difficulty for parents comes in, is that these conversations start so young,
Mm-hmm.
You can go from Polly Pocket and cartoons to, Temptress in no time at all. And that's quite a transition. And I say this as someone on the male side who really struggled with this whole, puberty happens, and all of a sudden I've been thrown into this world of sex and sexuality and reproduction and the evils of masturbation and all this type of thing and blah, blah, blah. Like, that whole thing was just kind of like, wow, this is overwhelming and not what I signed up for. I'm busy with my Legos. Can we talk about this sometime later on? Like, this is awkward. Like, I really don't care. Thank you and good night. So yeah, it's a very difficult thing.
That's who I sympathize with the most. I think in this group is young girls. I think the pressure is enormous because there's videos of, what seems to be expected that are pretty much everywhere. For a young woman that's like, that's not what I want to do. And that's not even, wait for some sort of like, maybe it is a biological driver that makes you curious in that kind of practice. But I mean, yeah, I think it could be pretty overwhelming to think about.
Well, and now we have kind of the reverse. Well, and now we kind of have the reverse problem in fashion, because now people are complaining that the fashion for young girls has gotten too sexy and young girls are being too sexualized. And one of the common complaints you'll see on social media is, where's the one-piece bathing suit for my 10-year-old? Everything is a 2-piece, and that's just not appropriate. And so you have this sort of changing conversation about it, and especially when you're in the middle, as we are, of a moral panic with trans people and all this type of thing, similar to its cousin, Satanic Panic from the 80s. People are looking for, again, to send this message of, if I can cover my daughter in the right garment, she won't attract that attention.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
To bring the conversation back to clothing and fashion again, if I can find the one-piece bathing suit that, with the ruffle around the waist that isn't too revealing and all this type of thing, then that will keep her safe and she won't attract the type of attention. And if I can't find that at a store, then that means the fashion industry is failing me. And
that it's sexualizing our children.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is just, that's a lot.
I mean,
that's the power of clothing.
It's the same thing as the resurgence of peasant dresses. That's a lot of where that came from, was just to cover girls more because people felt like it was getting too sexualized. And so now we're switching the other direction but you will never catch me in a peasant dress. I'm sorry. That's just not gonna happen.
Yeah. Well, several years ago, there was a woman named the Gas Princess who was running for the presidency of Ukraine, and she would always put her hair in a peasant braid, which is a braid wrapped around the back of her head to make her seem more country and rural and down to earth. It's hard to be relatable when your net worth is $22 billion. But she tried. So when you own the largest gas company in Ukraine, it's hard to feel relatable. So yeah, but this whole conservative, more rural, more sedate sort of thing, and our country does this. The Great Depression killed the flapper dress. Anytime things get a little bit out of control, we kind of circle the wagons, and the first way we do that is by changing what we wear. It happened after the 2008 financial crisis. Going into that, it was low-cut jeans, lingerie on the outside, bare midriff, all this type of thing. Financial crisis happens, boom, white plain t-shirt, higher-waisted jeans, much more conservative, much more covered, all this type of thing. And so when we're in the middle, basically, of a moral panic right now, people are looking for that conservative message to send to say, we're rejecting that.
Maybe a little bit more conformity, right? Maybe a get back to work ethic and a fashion that that promotes that. Which, I don't know what that looks like, but
Carhartt is fashionable right now. Carhartt.
Yeah, the working brand, yeah.
Yeah, like that's what dudes wear to construction sites because it lasts forever. Sort of. That's so I mean, but now it's a point of fashion, which I always laugh when I see people wearing clean Carhartt gear. I'm like, you don't, like, that's just weird to me. Like, where's the scuff marks? Where's the dirt? Where's the rips and tears? Like, that's not, no. Like,
well, as you were talking about the Ukraine situation, we do that in our politics as well. Not only do you have to, suits, that kind of stuff, dress, but if you look at when, like in America, when we have two presidents running against each other, look at the ties, look at the color of their wives' dresses, because they represent their sides by the clothes that they wear, which is just so bizarre.
Well, and that's something that's very tough, to be the wife of a president, because every single thing you wear is scrutinized every time you leave the house.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be photographed a dozen million times and all this sort of thing, and that's, I think, one of the tough things. I think they've done something very clever since we've had a woman vice president for the first time. Never happened before. The way that they style her is very consistent and very careful. They've kind of created a bit of, like Hillary Clinton, a kind of a uniform that she always kind of sticks to so that it doesn't become a fashion conversation. But she did have a terrible scandal because she did a photo shoot for Vogue and she was wearing Chucks. And that was not the picture that they approved. And Vogue, Anna Wintour, went ahead with the picture of her in a pantsuit and Chucks anyway. And that caused, in the fashion world, a huge scandal, and there were two camps. Camp A was like, oh, this photograph isn't, necessarily very good, like, it doesn't seem finished, sort of thing. It doesn't make a good cover. But Group B, and this was the interesting group, Group B was, how dare you misrepresent the vice president of the United States by having her wear casual shoes on the cover of America's leading fashion magazine? She should be in heels. And it was almost like an affront to like they were cheapening her, disrespecting her by putting out this image of, I'm the vice president, but don't take me very seriously because I'm wearing Chucks. Whereas if she'd been wearing Manolo Blahnik, it would have been, take me seriously because I'm the vice president. And I just went on the
also went
presidential
against her,
right.
People that aren't supportive of her or her politics, it became oh yeah, see, look, she doesn't even take this seriously.
Yeah. And it also, for Republicans, became a flashpoint because Melania Trump was never invited to appear on the cover of Vogue. Kamala Harris got a cover, and they weren't even in office yet because it was the December issue, which the photo was taken in November.
Wow.
They weren't in office till January 20th. And
then
Melania
that's
Trump
to
was
show
never asked.
Vogue being a fashion magazine, how much power that still has as being something in the fashion industry. I mean, we can swing votes by what you wear and by being in fashion.
And one of the anti-elite arguments by the Trump crowd is a criticism of Vogue that in the 4 years the Trumps were in office, Melania Trump was never given a Vogue cover. And if you go to a Trump rally, they'll mention that a lot. And it's like, well, she's very glamorous. She was a model. For one, she's already been in Vogue because she was a model. But either way, like, she didn't get a first. Laura Bush had a first lady cover. Michelle Obama had 2. Sort of thing. Hillary Clinton had one in the 90s. I mean, all this sort of thing. But Melania Trump, and that was, that's New York blue state Democratic elitism, because then Melania Trump was not invited, sort of thing. And so in that way, that's which for me, as someone who does politics and news, that's where one of my old careers and my present career intersects again. And this is something where, in terms of respect and gravitas and all this type of thing, fashion moves the world in ways that we might not suspect. But as it turns out, it does matter what shoes the first woman vice president is wearing on the cover of Vogue. It does matter that Melania Trump is the first lady in 40 years that doesn't get a Vogue cover. This stuff actually does matter. So fashion might seem stupid and trifling and dumb, and the girl I'm with right now thinks fashion is just the dumbest thing ever and is just like so ready for me to be done with this whole series and everything because she just hates all of this stuff. But the reality is, you wouldn't from the
That's one hell of a
Mid-Atlantic.
plug for the show.
I know. She's
By the way,
so ready. She's just
come
so
check out
ready.
the episode that I'm going to be recording. That's ruining my home life.
No, it's
major friction for every problem in my life. It's that my whole world is crumbling. So come support me on this. Awesome.
And maybe bring alcohol. I don't know. Yeah, no, absolutely. But I mean, so like from the Mid-Atlantic slave trade to the colonization of the New World to how are we going to perceive the first woman vice president? Fashion is there.
To Cameron's home life conversation.
Yes, to the fact that my girlfriend doesn't like fashion and thinks this is all utter garbo, and all this type of thing. Like somehow
camera on your shoulder. I think, Cameron, when you're at home and you're gonna have a GoPro there, and it's just gonna be continual B footage of whatever amazing, inspiring words of wisdom come from the conversation between you and your significant other. That'll be awesome, right? Like,
she I think she missed her calling as a communist in China. She would really like us to all wear uniforms that are all the same. And I'm like, you need to move to North Korea. I think they do that there. They have hairstyles regulated by the government in North Korea. Which I think is quirky. Isn't that so weird? Can you imagine going to a hair salon to pick the government approved hairstyles? That's North Korea. Like, they have them on the wall and you have to pick from them. Yeah, it's so insane. So,
I mean, at this point, I go to my hairstylist and just tell her, pick a color. Whatever you feel like today.
Whatever. Just
yeah, no, it's so crazy. Yeah. Kim Jong-un banned leather jackets because he likes wearing them and wanted to be the only one wearing them, so he banned them throughout North Korea.
Pretty sweet.
Yeah. But I mean, here's the thing, fashion is so important that even in the world's most, harsh dictatorship, they're regulating hairstyles and leather jackets. Yeah. It's everywhere. You can't escape it.
Yeah,
well, that
is everywhere. Imagine you'd have to, you conform right to a very specific, and it's like you've given them choice, but you haven't. But now you're blended in with that group of those people that.
Yeah, and everybody kind of sort of looks the same, and everyone has one of 17. I think there's 17 hairstyles. That the clothes are all mass manufactured. There's very few of those. All of a sudden, even in the Soviet period, because of central planning, every consumer product was chosen by the central planners in Moscow. So suits only came in whatever color fabrics the central planners ordered, in whatever styles the central planners determined. In fact, in the late Soviet era, they said the fastest way to know something was out of style was when it got into shops in Russia, because the central planners were consistently 2 to 5 years behind on style. So if you were wearing something that you had just bought at a shop, that was unfashionable in the Soviet Union. It was much more fashionable to wear something you jury-rigged together, because you could move fashion forward faster than the central planners in Moscow could.
Yeah. Well, there we have it. We ended on a geopolitical note, I think.
Right?
Yeah.
And with all of that, every single one of those people still gets up every day and picks which piece, which hairstyle, what they're putting on, even with such a limited supply.
Very good point. Very good point. Yeah. Something to think about. Thank you two, for spending almost an hour and a half with me here. And I think it's been a good conversation.
That's all for this episode of the Cameron Journal podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Visit us online at CameronJournal.com. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and I love to talk to my followers and listeners, so please feel free to get us on social media at Cameron Cowan on Twitter, and we'll see you next time on the Cameron Journal podcast.